I can't count how many times I walk into my room only for me to immediately wonder why I just set foot in there. It wasn't to go to bed, it's 4 in the afternoon, and I'm not a chud. It wasn't to grab my phone, it's in my pocket. I try to think about it for a minute, but my brain is just empty. So I head out of my bedroom, only to remember in that exact instance that I needed to grab some chapstick. Why do we think of something, start the action to fix the problem, only for us to forget the problem? It's all thanks to biology. Our brains are a lot like RAM for a computer. They're expensive and they have a lot of computing power, but it can only store so much memory. It's quickly trying to figure out what thoughts and experiences should be sent to short-term memory or long-term memory. Most of it gets sent to short-term. Otherwise, you'd remember that one time you ate eggs for breakfast on June 6, 2023. Those eggs were so delicious. So your brain tries to isolate and figure out the special memories. The times when the eggs were made more deliciously than you're used to. Okay, but that doesn't explain why I forgot why I stepped foot in my room. Isn't that something that's worth remembering? Well, your brain doesn't really think so. At the most basic level, memory has 3 different phases that must happen in order for us to have access to past content. The first is to get the information into memory, a process that is referred to as encoding. Then you gotta keep that information around, and that is called storage or consolidation. It's akin to pressing the save button on the document that you've just created on your computer. Well, I guess nowadays I'm thankful for the autosave button, otherwise this script would not be here. Unlike that analogy with the computer, you must continually restore that content into the brain. It's not a one-time save. And then finally, you must be able to bring that information to the mind in the moment that you need it. So, memory failures can reflect errors at any of these different stages. One of the most common times when errors occur is during that initial encoding phase, where what often happens is we're just not devoting enough effort or paying enough attention. Because we weren't thinking about it too hard, the brain actively searches for a consistent time to dump that memory. And when you enter a new environment, like the doorway of your room, it uses that as an opportunity for consolidation. The new environment or new train of thought that you go on for just 1 second acts as a reset point for your brain. So, you forget it. But then your brain realizes, hey, that wasn't something for the short term. It's more like medium term. Not long enough to remember for life, but not short enough to remember for only 30 seconds. And the brain likes its association with things. So if your friend told you to grab hot Cheetos, you reach the kitchen and forget, then head back to the living room, your brain is associating the living room with the thought of grabbing those Cheetos. The brain is essentially moving info into the trash can, but it doesn't empty the trash just yet. It digs around in there and finds what you were searching for, and if it searches and searches but can't find it, it'll keep working in the background. And that's why sometimes you'll remember what you were looking for 6 hours later. Memory is an active and effortful process, but it's also a balance. You can't just brute force it, trying to think over and over again about what you've forgotten, because it's like trying to fit a square shape into a triangular hole. The brain will work better if you give it less to compute, which is easier said than done. But it is possible if you take a second to look at your surroundings, instead of stressing yourself out over what you forgot. Unless you're forgetting to make my eggs. Then you can hurry up and make my order. But that's the thing, right? Sometimes we don't have a second to give our brain time to process. We're working, trying to remember tons of orders. We're scrolling while trying to actively remember what we've forgotten. We have a lot on our plates, and that's not helping our memory. So if you feel like you're forgetting things quickly, it could be due to stress, fatigue, or multitasking. In Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I remember reading that Greg would throw a pillow on his floor to remind himself to do something later. Which sometimes works, but it could also train your brain to put thoughts on pause, and that's why you can forget things and remember them later. So, if you really don't want to forget something after thinking about it, I like to write it down. Or, if you forgot it in the first place, maybe it wasn't something important. At least according to your brain, it's not.